Welcome to Successful Philanthropy. I'm your host, Jean Shafiroff, and today's show is all about animals. With us is Scott Howe. He's the Executive Director and CEO of the Animal Rescue Fund of the Hamptons. Welcome, Scott. And I see you've brought a little friend. And who is this?
I'm sorry she's trying to steal the show from you, but this is my ARF rescue, Stretch. And she's very special to me because I adopted her before I ever came to work at ARF.
Lovely. And Stretch, can you say hello to me? I'm an animal lover for sure. At my home, we have 5 rescues, all different breeds. And I can't tell you how much joy they bring into our household.
Exactly.
And so now, before we speak about ARF, let's talk about animal rescue here in the United States right now during this COVID-19 pandemic. From everything I've read, animal adoptions are way up. And is that a concern to the animal world? What is your take on all of this?
I think there's been a lot of attention, certainly, as people started working from home during the various quarantine restrictions that started in the spring. There was a call, though, at that time from many shelters, municipal shelters, that needed help. They were concerned about their own staff becoming ill. They were concerned about how they would care for the animals. And so across the country, an amazing number of people, Stretch, sit, good girl, came forward to foster and to adopt during that time period. So actually, and that was true at ARF as well. It was amazing. At the same time, many people chose to, unfortunately, purchase pets from pet stores. And so many people experienced at the height of the pandemic, first wave, what it's like to live with a puppy. And that can be very difficult. So there was a lot of concern about whether or not these animals would be surrendered. We haven't seen that at ARF, in fact, and we've been really heartened by that. The people, what we have seen is a big uptick in people needing obedience classes for their pets.
So training for their animals. And so everything I've seen is adoptions are up. People want to bring in a little friend into the home.
Right.
And with so many people now at home like never before, well, a furry little friend is a welcome addition. And I think it's great. As you mentioned, everyone is a little concerned about owner surrenders after this pandemic ends. And like you and like everyone, we all want this to end soon. However, we don't want it to affect our furry friends. And so, and what about COVID? I remember back in April and in May, actually, I was asked to speak on this topic on national television, all about, well, if you have a pet, a cat or a dog, can your pet get COVID? And everything that I read indicated that it would be almost 1 in a million chance. And evidently, there were a few cases at the Bronx Zoo, some lions and tigers, and then there were 1 or 2 dogs that came down with the virus, a few cats, and now we're really not hearing about anything. So what is your advice to our viewers about what should you do with your pet to protect your pet? And then if you get COVID, how do you behave with your animal?
The best recommendation, as we're still, even now learning so much about the virus and learning that some species of animals are more susceptible than others.
Such as
Minks, ferrets. Those animals have proven to be susceptible to coronavirus, and particularly the virus that causes COVID-19. However, like you say, the cases of domestic animals in the U.S., cats and dogs, it's been limited and it's still being studied. The best advice that I found that's been consistent is that if you or a loved one in your home is ill with COVID-19, you should quarantine away from your animal.
And what
And
do you do if you live alone? How do you do that? I guess you have
it,
to find a friend to take care of your dog or a
it would
relative.
be, and so the next part of advice is to have a plan for in that event what would happen. And in some cases, that's when an organization like ours might be able to help.
And
Or
have you done any work with individuals who've come down with COVID-19? Have you taken their pets?
fortunately, during this time, nothing directly related to COVID-19, but there have been cases where people have had to seek long-term care for other medical conditions, and we have had to hold pets during that period.
And
And
that's a wonderful thing to
yeah,
do for someone who can't take care of a pet because of illness.
right.
And so I've read that if you have a pet and you're concerned about exposing your pet, you should be very careful. And I believe the CDC came forth with guidelines for pet owners. And I know them, but could you tell our viewers what those guidelines are? And coming from you, I think it
Oh,
makes all the difference in the world.
well, the best guidelines, um, just normally in a healthy household, that we still recommend that your pets keep social distance
Mhm.
from pets from other households and people from other households. That's may sound overly cautious, but I don't think you can be too cautious right now. And that's a good advice. It's also good advice to keep your cats indoors. We recommend that year round, but especially now with the coronavirus, we would recommend that um, indoor outdoor cats are indoors, especially this winter. And if you or someone in your family becomes ill, that you quarantine in a part of your house separate from your pets.
Yes, but the likelihood of a pet coming down with COVID is, as I said, 1 in a million because it's just
Right.
not happening or we're not reading about it now. Now, of course, that could change, but
That
we
could,
are well into this second
right.
wave of this virus, and we really have not seen a big change. And so we need to keep our dogs then away from dog parks. I think at least
It
it's
would,
hard for the dogs because
it,
they want to socialize,
it's
and
hard.
it's
It's hard.
hard for the owners because they want their pets to socialize. So, what do you advise?
Um, I advise make sure your pets get good exercise. I think if you can, it also comes down to an individual's personal risk, going to a dog park, being in public, that you need to maintain social distance as well as your dogs. I would be more concerned about myself and maintaining distance from other people in the dog park um, than my dog. And I think actually what I seem to follow myself personally is just make sure that the other dogs your dog wants to socialize with, that those owners are okay with that. And I think as long as we can respect each other's personal concerns and boundaries right now, that's probably the best approach to take. And we can
Well, it
make those
sounds good to
decisions.
me. And now, for all of our viewers, what are the 5 rules of adoption? So many people say, "Oh, I want to adopt a pet," and then all of a sudden they get a pet into the home, and 95% of people adopting are good owners, but there's always a percentage of people who really shouldn't adopt. And so, what do you recommend? I always say love is very important, and there's an expense involved, and there's a big responsibility. And if you're working 24/7 out of the house, it might be very difficult. But I know our viewers want to hear from you.
I think it's important to find a pet that matches your lifestyle. And for
Good
an act,
answer.
right. So when I adopted Stritch, she was 6 months old and she was the quietest dog at the shelter. We thought, this dog, she's a little Buddha. She's wise beyond her years. After 3 days, she had chewed through my shoelaces, taking her for a walk. She had chewed through her collar in the 5 minutes it took me to get to the beach. She was a terror, and we had no idea what we had gotten ourselves into. Luckily for me at that time, ARF recommended training classes, and
Mhm.
that's what saved my marriage and saved Stritch. And we did 18 weeks of obedience. We just kept signing up for another class. And what we realized, ARF has a number of great trainers, but um, the the advice I remember being yelled at me by ARF's trainer was, "It's not the dog, it's the handler." And so really it was about me being trained. And being trained to understand a dog like Stritch and what her needs are, to keep her mentally active as well as physically active was important. And that's really the biggest thing we see with dogs, even at the shelter, is that it's not just about physical exercise, it's about mental exercise as well, and making sure that their nose gets active, that they get puzzles and treats and games,
Mhm.
and that they stay mentally stimulated. And that makes sure at the end of the day, she's truly exhausted.
Interesting. And
Sit.
our one of our dogs, Rosita, she's a little bit of a diva. She's beautiful, and her joy is getting her belly rubbed
Mhm.
and then her paws. She puts out a little paw like a
Oh,
princess, as if she wants it kissed. And I rub all her little paws, and they bring so much
they
joy.
do. And they've been I bet they've been a big comfort for you in these last few months.
Great comfort. I can't think of any more unconditional
Conditional.
love than owning a pet. Now, Scott, you've been at the helm at ART for the last 5 years. Were you a natural animal lover? Did you grow up with pets?
Oh, I grew up with pets as a boy. At our peak, there were 3 dogs and 2 cats. And both the cats were strays that actually adopted us, I would say. Um, and so we had dogs, small, medium, and large. I didn't think I would necessarily go to an animal shelter. When I grew up, we thought of the pound as a place where that's where stray dogs and mean dogs went. And I really didn't understand rescue until I was an adult. And the irony for me was that I was born in Texas and lived in New York the most of my adult life. And Stritch is from Texas. I like to say we were both rescued from Texas. But I really didn't understand the fact that over 1 million animals are euthanized in shelters every year, still in the United States.
It's a real shame. And I know there is an organization called Best Friends Animal Society
Exactly.
who has as its mission to end all the euthanizing of animals in shelters across the United States by the year 2025. I want to hear more about ARF. It
Well,
is such a fine shelter, and you're based in East Hampton,
right.
correct? And tell me a little bit about what your future plans are and what you did during this pandemic. Were you open? Were you closed? Could you
Sure.
adopt? And how did all of that work?
Well, very quickly, as things started to deteriorate in March, I became Stretch. You don't need to
Stretch.
worry.
Mm.
We became concerned about our staff as we were learning more about the virus and the risk for our staff. And my greatest fear was that my staff would become ill and
Mhm.
we would have more animals in the shelter than we could care for. So we Stretch. Will you sit? Sit. Good girl. Thank you. So we, as a team, began conducting adoptions outside. We started scheduling our adoptions by appointment so we could track who was coming. We began temperature checks. We started wearing masks before and asking our adopters to wear masks before that became standard procedure. And we wanted to focus on reducing the number of animals in the shelter because I didn't want puppies growing up in a shelter. And that proved wise. And at the height of the virus in April in New York, we paused and only staff was allowed in the shelter. And then we resumed rescues and adoptions in May. And we've been going ever since. It is, again, by appointment. We really want to limit the number of people inside our building. I think like we've learned now is that the viruses, we're most susceptible inside interiors,
Indoors.
indoors.
Hmm.
And so as the weather turns cold, that is another concern here in the Northeast. But we have a strategy in place for still maintaining our mission and doing adoptions, but again, by appointment and on a limited scale.
So you're being very careful.
Critical.
And now, what about the future of ARF? I
Well,
understand you're about to embark on a new building project. I've
yes.
been hearing about this, but I want to hear from you.
It's exciting. This is something ARF has been planning about what its future will look like, and what the future of animal welfare will look like, and how we position ARF for the next 20 years. And we have our board of directors as our board of directors has chosen to reinvest in our existing facility. And so beginning in 2021, we are going to raise our existing kennels to the ground and start over with new kennels. The most important part of our building is going to be built from the ground up. And it's also the oldest part of our building, dating back to 1985.
And so I love that you're going to create a new state-of-the-art kennel
Yeah, so
for all the dogs. I think that's wonderful. And the cats.
The cats also are going to have reimagined catteries in the main part of the building. So really, the kennels will be completely new and the rest of the building will be completely renovated. But we're also adding a year-round 8,000 square foot enclosed training facility. So we can offer training for dogs like Stritch and our own ARF dogs year-round, day and night, even in the winter.
Now, if I lived in California and I wanted to get my dog trained at ARF, is this something that could happen or unlikely? Are you mostly
unlikely local? So certainly, if you're in the Hamptons in the summer for 6 weeks, it'd be a great time to sign up and come to ARF and train. But no, we don't offer boarding. We think training is actually best to do with the owner and the animal rather than sending an animal off. We really want that bond to develop with the people who are going to be working and caring for the animals on a daily basis.
Yes, and for our viewers, we are with Scott Howe, the CEO and Executive Director of Animal Rescue Fund of the Hamptons. And Scott, now you mentioned this building project. How much money do you need to raise?
Well, we've been fortunate. We've divided our campaign into two parts. So the hard costs for construction, which we have been quietly raising for the last 4 years. And I'm happy to say we're at a point where we can go forward with the construction and building. The most
Fantastic. So you're building whatever you've planned is a reality and it will happen, but I'm sure you have operating expenses.
And that's it. How can we operate and maintain this building at this capacity in a sustainable way? And in part of coming up with those numbers, we also realize every year I've been at ARF, we have been responding to a natural disaster. Hurricane Maria, Hurricane Harvey, Hurricane Laura this year in Louisiana. And that seems to become part of a mission of a shelter like ARF is helping nationally, is being a regional leader to help in a time of national crisis.
So you take in animals from these locations where there have been natural disasters.
Exactly.
And I think that's a wonderful thing. But getting back to operating expenses, what kind of numbers are you looking at so that maybe some of our viewers will want to donate? And then I want your website.
Good. So a total project for this operating side and expanding programs, which would include emergency response, would be $15 million.
Over what period of time? Because
over the next
5
years. Yes.
So you need to raise $15 million over the next 5 years. Well, that's a big number. And so, but there are people around who want to help for sure. And what is the website?
arfhamptons.org.
And if I were to go on the site and take a look, which I've done, of course, but if our viewers want to go take a look and they want to get a little more information, I'm sure you're readily accessible to someone who is serious about getting involved and perhaps helping.
Of course.
Yes. And now I understand you have a fascinating group of supporters and donors. And Isaac Mizrahi has been very involved. And tell us a
Oh,
little bit about some of your celebrity personalities who've helped
well,
and lend their name. And to Isaac Mizrahi, I just want to thank you. I know you're a big animal lover. We want to get you on this show soon. I hope you'll come on. But thank you for all you do for the animal world and for ARF.
oh, Isaac is such a great friend to Arf, and every year he draws an original artwork for our Arf Dog Walk, which is every October, our stroll to the sea. It's been happening for over 30 years, and Isaac so graciously does our T-shirts, our invitations, our posters for the events, and we've honored him at our summer gala as
I
well
think
for
I was
that.
at that
You
gala, and
were,
he is
you
such a
were.
personality.
Uh,
Yeah, he's
He's a dear
funny.
friend. He's a rescuer himself, and he also will volunteer and show up on an afternoon to walk dogs in the shelter. He's a really
So
he
he's
leads with his
hands-on
heart.
too.
He leads with his heart.
Yes,
It's
yes.
great.
And then I believe Peter Marino,
Peter Marino has been a
the
longtime friend of ours,
yes, the interior
architect and
decorator. He's
designer.
always in black leather with a motorcycle
He's
cap. He's another great guy.
he's amazing, and loves our cats, but also makes sure that our dogs have these wonderful landscaped exercise pens. And again, a dear friend to Arf, and great to see him every summer at our gala.
And then I heard you have one anonymous donor who's made your new building project possible. And now, to our audience, an anonymous donor is someone who doesn't want anyone to know who they are. And some people opt to do this for various different reasons. And however you want to donate, the key is to donate. But I want to thank
Thank you.
that person on your behalf as well. And I understand it's a woman and she's very under the radar, wants to keep it that way. And I know many people like that. I think it's great. And I'm sure you want to
Yeah,
thank her.
thank you. And she loves her ARF dogs. And we also even something that's been very important and continues to be is people are also thinking about their giving as a part of their estate and making
Mhm.
planned gifts. And we've been very excited to announce one of our largest planned gifts in our history that's going to be recognized in our building project. So a local gentleman, Richard Wells McCabe, has pledged his estate to ARF, and we're recognizing that gift in our new building, and we're naming our new welcome center in his honor for that gift.
Wonderful.
So there's so many ways to give, both now and in the future.
And also volunteering.
Exactly.
And part of being a philanthropist is volunteering your time and knowledge. And for our audience, I always say, and I wrote a book on philanthropy called Successful Philanthropy, How to Make a Life by What You Give. You give your time, you give your knowledge, and when you have resources, you have an obligation to give. But for those that can't really write a check now, many people are out of work. How can they help by volunteering? And that
Exactly.
time is so important.
There are many ways, and one of the most important ways we're developing right now is to potentially foster. So at this time, when activity at the shelter is reduced because of construction happening and precautions over COVID-19, we're asking people to foster. It could be short term. It could be 2 weeks to foster kittens until they come to weight and can be spayed and neutered and then adopted. It also could be a dog being treated for heartworm. So maybe for 6 weeks, if you could have a friendly dog at your home and while he or she receives treatment, and then can go on to a forever home, that's a great way that you can help now too. But we also have people who volunteer at our thrift shop, and that's a big help too.
And fostering is a great thing to
It
do.
is.
And so often people who foster animals end up adopting. And you
Yes.
hear stories of someone, well, I have one dog. And then they foster another dog and they decide to adopt that dog. And then they foster a third.
We call
And
them foster failures.
a little bit. Well, when you fall in love with an animal, and hopefully when someone fosters, they fall in love. And I always say each being on this planet needs to be treated with dignity
I
and
agree.
respect, and that
I
includes
agree.
all the animals. Scott, we have about 1 minute left. What would you like to leave the audience with? And as we all know, this is a very hard time for most people, smack in the middle of this pandemic. But I would say encourage adoption, but I want to hear from you.
Oh, I think if you're considering opening your home and your heart to an animal right now, they will give you more than you ever imagined possible, love and support. Because this dog, when I walk her in the mornings, I can forget everything else that's happening and see the world fresh from her eyes. And there's not a morning she wakes up that she isn't grateful to be here and to see me and be alive. And that's such a gift.
It's a great gift. And hello there. Hello.
Stretch.
Stretch.
You ready? Aw.
Oh,
She's bored with us, I'm
oh,
afraid.
well, Scott, thank you so much for being with us and for sharing all you know about animals, and then for sharing the story of Animal Rescue Fund of the Hamptons with our audience. And
Thank you,
I
Jean.
hope to have you on again. Goodbye, little friend. Goodbye, little friend. And again, for our audience, this concludes Successful Philanthropy. I'm your host, Jean Shafiroff. I'll see you next week.